Doctor, are you living the dream or just dreaming of living? It is my honor to announce the PDA 20th Anniversary Special Conference this September 12th to the 14th in Frisco, Texas, the nation's leading course on dental practice growth. If you feel isolated as a leader who is frustrated that your schedule is unproductive, maybe your team is disjointed, or your systems are inefficient, this is the conference for you. The PDA 20th Anniversary Conference has all new features, including keynote speaker Emmitt Smith, who is a Pro Football Hall of Fame running back and entrepreneur. You can choose your own educational track to customize your learning experience. And when you register before July 1st, you will receive a 90-minute pre-meeting session that can help you boost and increase your productivity before you even attend the conference. Go to www.productivedentist.com and click the pop-up, or select Productive Dentist Academy Conference under the Dental CE and Events tab. That's www.productivedentist.com. Seating is limited. Register today, and we look forward to helping you make your dreams become reality.
Get the support you need. Success always requires support. So from the top down, think about your life, slow down, envision what you want, and find a framework for communicating to that team and set them up with the tools they need to be successful. It's not always easy, but it is simple.
Welcome to Investment Grade Practices Podcast, where we believe private practice dentists deserve to get the lifestyle today while building an asset for tomorrow. Join your host, Victoria Peterson, to design the practice of your dreams and secure your financial independence. Let's get started.
Welcome to a very special 4-part series of Everyday Practices Dental Podcast, Mary's Investment Grade Practices Podcast with Dr. Victoria Peterson. Victoria, welcome.
Good afternoon, Regan. It is so great to be here with you.
Thank you. With Investment Grade Practices, your award-winning podcast, we know that you tend to focus above the line, conversations like leadership, empowerment, 5-year forecast in the future. And I know it's really fun to do that and to be up in the clouds and imagining everything until it can come to execution time. That's when the rubber meets the road. And really, we're finding out right now that above the line visionary leaders will do well to come down below the line. It will serve them and benefit them in many ways. And you and I have talked about this quite a bit, which is why we're here today. Because if we don't have a strong foundation in our practice or in our life, everything that sits on top of it can begin to show wear and tear. And before you know it, you're on that hamster wheel, wondering why you're working so hard. And that's where Everyday Practices comes into play. Victoria, I know that you are going to dip down below the line to figure out what we can shore up this summer and get really happy, healthy practices. And I'm going to talk about how we can focus on those things to accelerate the results above the line so that we're both sort of married here. How does that sound?
I love that so much. And I'm glad that you and I are dedicating this to a 4-part series, because in Investment Grade Practices, we do have a 4-part series. There's business value and what it's going to be in the future, being bank ready, investor ready. There's operations and all the below the line pieces that have to get executed each day. There's communications through authentic storytelling, not only to, you have 2 customers, you have your patients and you have your team. So how are we communicating to our team? How are we communicating to our patients? And then the last quad is culture. What is the ecosystem that we're living in? So breaking it down into those 4 quads is going to be a lot of fun. I'm so happy to marry our podcast here for this series.
Me too. So we should give a shout out to Skip Miller as well. He taught us above and below the line. He's a celebrated author and has taught both of us over the years that technique. So Victoria, how do you describe above and below the line?
Well, above the line are those things that are aspirational and business planning. It goes into future forecasting, planning, strategy. When you're in the above the line conversations, you're in that part of your brain that's very creative. It is looking out and saying, man, Amazon is coming to my area. How do I want to play in that field? And it's looking out and saying, working with people to understand what are the insurance mixes or the revenue mixes or the employer mixes in my area, and how as a dentist do I play in that field? Do I want to ignore it and keep my current patient base? Do I want to expand my building and prepare for the growth? Do I want to have a second location? Do I want, all of those fun sort of strategic planning and marketing things come. And when you put it through the framework of financial freedom, what will it take for me to build financial freedom? Then you can execute on a 5-year, 10-year lifetime sort of frame and keep up with the microeconomics of your area as well as the bigger trends of it. So when we work with doctors and they're in the planning mode, it's so much fun because you haven't executed anything and it's on paper but then you have to bring it to life, and that's all the
Yeah.
below the line. That's the management part. So when I work with doctors, I find they all love leadership and nobody likes management because that's the day-to-day details that have to
Wow.
get done.
That's absolutely true. You have to take a lot of responsibility when you step into the true leadership pieces, and I think it can be frustrating at times also because as the visionary, I can speak to you as a CEO. You have like your gift is getting downloads of what's next and best, what's next in the market. Where are we going? Like you said, if Amazon's coming in town, how do I want to position myself to that? So
Mhm.
you have the gift of that. The other piece of it is that execution piece. And already for most of us, everybody listening anyway, it has likely been in practice for a while.
Mhm.
So I know myself as a leader too, I will make assumptions and think, okay, well, I communicated this X amount of years ago. And so why isn't it being done now? Even though we've, team turnover has happened, we haven't maybe onboarded that particular detail. Like, when you really get below the line and you start thinking about those little details, that can pull us down and get us out of that above line. So I know in this first part series, we're going to talk today about culture, team
Yeah.
culture, practice culture, and looking above the line and what that means and below the line. So, Victoria, we'll start above the line and leadership. What does this mean to you, and how does it apply to culture for you?
Um, I'm going to say that there has been a marked difference pre and post pandemic in what it means to show up as a leader. And it's more complex. We have 4 or 5 generations sometimes working in the same practice, minimum 3. So you've got baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and whatever below the millennials
Gen
are,
Zs,
Gen Zs.
and
Yeah.
then Gen Alpha, which is right nipping on the heels.
Oh my gosh. And I'm clearly the tail end of boomers, the beginning of Gen X. And what I love about this is that the millennials and Gen Z are really activating on the lifestyle goals that we purported. So
Mhm.
baby boomers wanted life balance, this and that, but we were raised by people of the depression area of work hard, work hard, work hard, and we're overly aggressive in work and 80-hour weeks and this and that. Younger generations aren't putting up with that. So, above the line leadership for me right now means how can I role model what I want to have? And so,
Oh.
if I want, life balance or life blending, or I want to recognize that I'm a full human first and my business is there to provide financial outlet, emotional outlet, those things, being inclusive, that your policies are good for as many people as possible on your team. So, one of the things that you've done that helps leaders so much in the PDA ecosystem is brought in Donald Miller, storytelling, business made simple. And one of the things that we take our leaders through is identifying the 3 key characteristics of their ideal employees. And I think that is a gift for leaders to get really clear on who do I work well with because they serve my patients well.
Mhm.
And that leads to the other piece, which is how do we want to serve? What is my standard of care? What is my philosophy of care? If you're in Medicaid or HMOs and you don't want to be there, there's a way out. Getting off the rat race is a key to building great culture. And only the leader can do that. Your team can't, they may desire that, but they can't execute on that. And
They don't
that's
know where to execute to. I think that's the
right.
gift of that key characteristic is it gives It gives employees guideposts, and it gives them a way to stay between the navigational beacons and understand that the doctor. So, for example, at PDA, ours is knowledgeable, relationship driven, and responsive. And we've had those for about 2 years now, and we're coming up and we're going to revisit those again and ask the question, are those serving us? But every employee knows in that particular order, this is how I'm expected to show up. And then the secret to this, which is really, you need to hear this right now. The secret isn't just the word. The word actually is, it's a word, knowledgeable. The secret is how the leader defines it.
Knowledgeable in what?
Knowledgeable in what? In what way? Yeah. So going through that exercise of asking yourself what characteristics matter and will help me achieve my goal, my big vision, and then pulling that down into how do I personally define this? That is such a gift to your team because then they can understand this is where I'm supposed to go and this is how we're going to define this.
And I think that's where the leadership vision of, defining who we are, who we serve, where we're going, it then dips below the line into what are my daily actions. And I think there's a great example of this. So if we say, um, one of our key characteristics is comprehensive care, for
Yes.
example, right? So now all my marketing, messaging, everything is lined up to attract that patient that has complex dental needs, that is looking for comprehensive care, not just, the one crown that my insurance might pay for. That's a very specific philosophy and standard of care. So then there's a key characteristics of how do we deliver on that, and then there's the daily actions. So the below the line piece might be we comprehensive diagnose all new patients. The second behavior may be we follow up on all unscheduled patients.
That's it. Those are daily actions. Yes, those are
Right?
below the line,
Below the
tangible.
line. And so what I'm seeing above the line is doctors are still on this roller coaster of high and low production.
Mhm.
And it's because they don't have a cadence and I want to get into the cadence later and the metrics later, but the ecosystem for the team to play in, like how do I succeed? How do I ring the bell? Is oftentimes missing. So I think sometimes we go too fast in metrics and we skip the relationship part.
We absolutely often overlook and skip the relationship part. I think relationships are one of the elements in dentistry that can get overlooked the most and also can be treated like they are insignificant because we are in a society where a lot of it is go, go, go. And we see a lot of marriages fall apart in dentistry. We see a lot of damage being done and a lot of turnover happening. And I really do chalk it up to how you weigh relationships and check ins with your team, with your patients, and with yourself. I think it all definitely starts at the question that you have posed often, Victoria, and that is, is everything that we're doing benefiting the patient? Is it all for the benefit of the patient? That right there as an anchor statement is something that everyone can come to every day and look at their own role and ask themselves how they are showing up. Are we in relationship with our patients? I think of, like you said, the back door. I think of the back door right away. Are patients coming and they're not coming back? Like we can run reports for that. It's easy to marry data to the feeling around it. And there's clues, just like a health diagnosis that lets us know maybe we're not in as great a relationship as we thought. Is our team calling in at the very last minute or not even that? They're just texting and like, by the way, I'm just not going to show up today. If you're in really good relation with your team, likely they will not do that unless something catastrophic has happened. So those little clues can tell us how good of relationship we are in with our patients and our team. And then, of course, ourselves too. I think that's very important. We put ourselves last many times. And a few episodes back, I'll put it in the show notes. There was a book that Chad and I reviewed, and it talked about our different buckets. There's, our physical bucket, our mental bucket, our spiritual bucket, and what are we doing to maintain each of those things? And it is no secret, I've shared many times on Everyday Practices, my own journey that I have taken over several long years to helping, make sure that my buckets are full and I'm taking care of myself so I can be a good leader, and I can be a good parent and a good spouse and a good friend, all of those things.
Yeah, I've been in dentistry since 1979, and I can remember
The year I was born.
oh my goodness, I love that so much. So I've been a hygienist since you were like a toddler.
Yeah. You were
Uh,
very, very young, let's be fair.
yeah, true. I was 17 when I
Yeah.
came into dentistry, but there were times, like in the 80s when interest rates were high, a lot of doctors were going bankrupt. There were times in the 90s where we heard about burnout, but I honestly didn't think that it was burnout. It was more like rust out. Doctors were bored and or financially not savvy. We are truly seeing mental health burnout right now, and it is because of this cycle, of social media and everything that we're running in. And oftentimes people think about being a productive dentist as being busy
Mhm.
or a productive dentist, and it's absolutely the opposite. You have to clear the clutter on everything that drains you mentally, physically, and energetically in order to slow down and serve well. So some people are tuned, like they're a Ferrari, and they're tuned to seeing 16 patients a day. Like they're like this. This is their tempo.
Yeah.
And you have to make sure that you've got a tempo of high tempo people with you, and that practice will run well. The patients will be appreciative if you at least slow down long enough to make eye contact and say, I'm so glad that you are here today.
Yeah.
I know we appear very busy, yet you are really important to me. So again, you can focus on patients in a high volume practice and a slower practice, a boutique practice, as long as you create the ecosystem for your team to thrive. And that's what I want to say about above and below the line around culture is knowing, and you brought this up, Reagan, knowing yourself and your temperament and what your expectations are. And please, if your temperament is anger all the time, go to therapy, go to counseling, get a life coach, get an anger management coach. Our society as a whole is so traumatized. I think we have global PTSD. And like, do your work
I
because
laugh, but it's serious, and you are
it's so serious,
correct.
because your team will follow you. So if your team is angry, upset, and bitching at each other, you do have to take a look in the mirror, and that
Yeah.
is the hard part. And so get the support you need. Success always requires support. So from the top down, think about your life, slow down, envision what you want, and find a framework for communicating to that team and set them up with the tools they need to be successful. It's not always easy, but it is simple.
Well, thank you, Victoria, for joining me jointly on this special episode of Investment Grade Practices Meets Everyday Practices Dental Podcast. We look forward to releasing our next episode coming up very soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Investment Grade Practices Podcast. If you find value in this episode, help us spread the word by passing it along to a dental friend, subscribe, and give us a like on iTunes or Spotify. Learn more about building your investment grade practice at productivedentist.com today.